سيدنا محمد وعلى سيدنا محمد وآله وأصحابه وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وآله وأصحابه وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه. سبحان الله بحمده سبحان الله العظيم سبحان الله بحمده سبحان الله سبحان الله بحمده سبحان الله. اللهم لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت مدد يا الله مدد يا الله. Today, inshallah, we are talking about the advices of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. This is a hadith related in Jami' Tirmizi. Abdullah ibn Abbas रदियल्लाहु अन्हु कहते हैं, मैं एक दिन रसूलुल्लाह सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम के साथ सवारी पर पीछे था. आपने फरमाया, ऐ लड़के, बेशक मैं तुम्हें चंद अहम बातें बतला रहा हूँ. तुम अल्लाह के अहकाम की हिफाजत करो, अल्लाह तुम्हारी हिफाजत फरमाएगा. तुम अल्लाह के हुकूक का ख्याल रखो तो उसे तुम अपने सामने पाओगे. तो अल्लाह के हुकूक का ख्याल रखो तो उसको अपने सामने पाओगे. जब तुम कोई चीज़ मांगो तो सिर्फ अल्लाह ही से मांगो. जब मदद चाहो तो सिर्फ अल्लाह ही से मदद तलब करो. और ये बात जान लो कि सारी उम्मत भी जमा होकर तुम्हें कुछ नफ़ा पहुँचाना चाहे तो वो तुम्हें उससे ज़्यादा कुछ भी नफ़ा नहीं पहुँचा सकती जो अल्लाह ने तुम्हारे लिए लिख दिया है. अगर वो तुम्हें कुछ नुकसान पहुँचाने के लिए जमा हो जाए तो इससे ज़्यादा कुछ नुकसान नहीं पहुँचा सकती जो अल्लाह ने तुम्हारे लिए लिख दिया है. कलम उठा लिए गए हैं और तकदीर के सहीफ़े खुश हो गए हैं. इमाम तिर्मिज़ी कहते हैं कि हदीस हसन सही है. Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu reported, Rasulullah sallam said, one day I was riding behind the Prophet, peace be upon him, and he said, oh boy, I shall teach you some words. Be mindful of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will protect you. Be mindful of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and you will find him in front of you. If you ask Allah. And if you seek help from Allah. And know that if all people were together to benefit you with anything, they would not benefit you except with what Allah has already prescribed for you. And if they were together to harm you with anything, they would not harm you except with what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had already prescribed against you. The pens have been lifted and the pages have dried. In another narration, the Prophet ﷺ said, be mindful of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and you will find him in front of you. Recognize and acknowledge Allah in times of ease and prosperity, and he will remember you in times of adversity. And know that what has passed you by was not going to befall you, and what has befallen you was not going to pass by you. And know that victory and success comes with patience, relief with affliction, and hardship with ease. Sallallahu ta'ala alaihi. This advice of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has two major themes. Number one, being mindful of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And number two, the necessity and importance of the belief in divine destiny and predestination, qaza wa qadr. Abdullah ibn Abbas at that time was 8 years old. He was a child. He was the son of his uncle, Abbas radiallahu anhu. He was sitting, riding behind him on a camel, when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam offered him this invaluable advice to this young man and taught him, number one, to be mindful of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What does that mean? What does that mean? To be mindful of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. To be mindful of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala means to remember that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is watching us all the time. To be mindful of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is watching us all the time. And Allah has said this in the Quran. that I'm with you wherever you are. Now then, what is the implication of this advice? What is he teaching this young man? 8-year-old boy. What is he teaching him at this age? What is he teaching him in this first part of the nasiha? Is if you remember that Allah is watching you all the time, then you would be mindful to live your life in obedience of His commands. That you will obey Him, that you would live His life in a way and do things and make choices in a way that will be according to the guidance He provided to you, that He will be pleased with you. That's what He's teaching him. What is the implication of that for us now? Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is teaching him when he's just 8 years old. How many of us parents have taught our children to be mindful of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at a young age? Which is why we grew up never being mindful of Allah watching us. You see, what has happened has happened. Our children have grown up. They're gone. But those young people who are not yet married and who will be married soon, inshallah, have children, will need to remember this. They will need to remember this, that I need to teach my children about being mindful of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And us adults, whatever age we are at, need to remember Allah is watching us. Never forget that Allah is watching us. All the shuyukh who prescribed zikrullah to their students and to their disciples, whatever zikrullah they prescribed, the intent is only one. Remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Single intent of all the askar that are prescribed, all the wazaif that are prescribed, one single objective. Remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He is watching you. And if we remember that Allah is watching me, that Allah is with me, and I have to be mindful like a child will be in front of his father. देखो, एक बच्चा अगर उसके सामने उसके वालिदैन खड़े हैं या उसके बड़े खड़े हैं, तो वो एहतमाम करता है कि ऐसा काम न करे कि जिससे उसको सजा मिले या उसके वालिदैन नाराज हो. सही है कि नहीं भाई? Every child, any child of any age, unless the child is a baby, if he is sitting in or standing in front of his elders, he minds himself as to how he behaves. Because he does not want to displease or disrespect or disobey the parents and the elders. Ye baat hai. This is how we should be all the time, knowing that we are before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and He is there and He is watching me. I must not behave in a way that will displease Him, that will be disrespectful for Him. This is what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is teaching Abdullah ibn Abbas at age 8. But we need to remember it ourselves. How many of us have forgotten this? Subhanallah, socho bhai. All day long, we do things, we say things, we behave in a way, and we have no idea, no conception that Allah is right now watching me. That I have to be mindful. अपनी बीवी से बात करते हुए, अपने बच्चों से बात करते हुए, अपने दोस्तों से बात करते हुए, अपने बिजनेस में बात करते हुए, हर हालत में, wherever you are, when you're talking to your wives, your husbands, your children, if you remember that Allah is with me and watching me, I don't want to say or do anything to my spouse, my children, my friends, in my business people that would be against His command, that would displease Him, that would be wrong. I do not want to do this. Wallahi lazim, आपके घर में कोई problem नहीं होगी. You would never have any issues in your relationships if you are mindful of this. क्यों? दूसरी advice, Allah will protect you. If you are mindful of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then Allah will protect you. Allah will protect you from all the harm and all the things that are harmful. This is His promise. And this is what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam told him. If you are mindful of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then Allah will be there for you to protect you. No harm will come to you. If you, third part of the advice, if you protect and fulfill His obligations upon you, if you protect and fulfill His obligations upon you, the obligations that He's kept of Himself and others upon you, then Allah will fulfill all your needs. अल्लाह ताला ने जो जिम्मेदारियां आप पे रखी हैं, अपने जो हुकूक रखे हैं अपने और औरों के, अगर वो आपने इखलास के साथ पूरे कर दिए, अल्लाह ताला आपकी तमाम ज़रूरियात का कफील हो जाएगा. If you fulfill His obligations and the obligations that He has placed upon you of others, then He will fulfill, He will be sufficient for all your needs. Fourth part of the advice. If you need something, if you need to ask somebody of something, if you seek help from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allahu Akbar kabira. एक बात इसमें समझने की है. One thing needs to be understood in this, which is obviously living in a social environment and social life. We do ask each other for all kinds of things, am I right? Which is normal, which is also natural. Obviously, if I'm sitting on the dining table and I need a glass of water, I'm going to ask my wife, if she's standing there, to please fetch me a glass of water. I'm not going to ask Allah to fetch me a glass of water. We need to understand this properly. But what needs to be remembered, I'm going to ask my wife or my child to fetch me a glass of water, but she would only do it if Allah puts it in His heart to obey me and to respect me. If Allah does not put in her heart, वो कहेगी आप खड़े होकर ले लो ना भाई, इतना दूर कहाँ है, आप मुझसे ही क्यों कहते हैं, जब देखो मुझसे ही कहते हैं. ये है कि नहीं भाई? Everything you ask her or your children, she will remind, मुझे क्यों कहते हैं? Why is he asking me to do it? इसलिए, when you ask even your children, your spouse or something, know in your heart and pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts in their mind, because it's Allah who is going to make this happen. May put in their heart to be kind, to be merciful, to fulfill their obligations. क्या सिखाया यहाँ अल्लाह ताला ने? What did He teach? What did Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam teach this young boy? There is no creator but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. that only He can make things happen. Only He can make things happen, and He is the one who manages all affairs. That there's no mediator between Allah and His servants, and that He alone should be resorted for relief at times of hardship and in times of need. This is what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was teaching Abdullah ibn Abbas. Number 5, he said, and remember, young man, if all the people of the world gathered together to benefit you with anything, they would not benefit you with anything more than what Allah has decreed for you. And if all the people of the world gathered together to harm you with anything, they would not harm you except what Allah has already decreed for you to be harmed. A very important lesson for us to learn. We are always afraid of people in the dunya. Somebody is there to harm me. What's going to happen? Look at all what's going on, all the crimes that are going on around me. Look, all the robberies going on around me. Look, all the corruptions around me. Look, all of this. Look at him. Look, we have to be watching. We are always afraid of somebody or something. Should we be? It's natural. It's natural, right? I mean, if you just hear in the news that in this area of Edmonton, there's been a spree of crimes, break-ins. Obviously, you're going to worry about it, right? You're going to worry about it. That would be normal. But remembering, no harm. If all people get together to harm you, it will not harm you except only what was already prescribed for you. It reminds me of a story that I read of somebody in one of the books. This man, he was an elderly man. He was living by himself. And he lived in a small house. There was nobody around. One night, he was sleeping and somebody broke into his house. He woke up. He kept sleeping. The person who broken into his house went to the chest where he kept his things. It was locked. It was locked. Remember that. And he started to try all these different kinds of keys and stuff to open it. And he heard it. He kept sleeping, and he told him while he was lying down, do whatever you can. You will not be able to break it because I had seeking Allah's protection to protect it. ये है ईमान की बात. You see, the peace of his heart was not gone. Yes, we would worry because we are human beings and our iman is weak. We know that. But remembering this makes it easy. It eases the worries and anxiety and fear. भाई रात को हम सोते हैं घरों में तो खटपट खटपट हर वक्त होता रहता है. Sometimes there are noises from here, sometimes there are noises from there. It's very common in houses, right? Now somebody wakes up and says, I heard some noise. I heard some noise. And they start to worry about it. Who is there? Has somebody broken in? Where is this noise from? And somebody else keeps sleeping. When I slept, I remembered Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and I asked for His protection. I'm going to be good. Then he would keep sleeping in peace. और जो होना है वो तो होना है. Whatever is predestined for you to suffer from is going to happen. And this is what the last advice is about, the reminder. The pens have been lifted and the pages have dried. The Prophet instilled in Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu at that time a belief in the divine destiny and predestination. Qada wa qadr. Everything occurs according to His decree and will. When we were studying the first surah of the Quran, I mentioned when Allah talks about the qalam, then Allah created the qalam first. And it asked the qalam to write everything. To write everything before creation, any creation, to write everything. And the qalam obeyed, and the pen obeyed, and wrote everything that was to happen from the beginning of the creation to the end. And it was put to ease, done. There's a hadith about this belief in Qadrullah. Ibn ad-Dalmi said that I one time went to Ubay ibn Ka'ab radiallahu anhu, and said to him, there is something in my heart about Qadha wa Qadr, about predestination. So please tell me something in the hope that Allah will remove this from my heart. See, this was a Sahabi of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he, even at that time, had confusions about the concept of Qadrullah, of Qadha and Qadr. We have it now. Am I right? You will, as soon as you talk about Qadha, Qadr and predestination, people would raise questions about it. This is not new. This was there all along. So, Ibn Abu Dalmi went to Ibn Ka'ab and said, I have this confusion in my heart about it. And he was worried about it. We don't worry about it. We make our own decisions. We may say, it doesn't make sense, that doesn't make sense, this doesn't make sense, that doesn't make sense. But he worried about it. You know why did he worry about it? Why is it that he worried about it and we don't? He worried about it because the belief in Qadha wa Qadr is requirement of Iman. Am I right? Belief in Qadha wa Qadr is a requirement of Iman. And that's why he was worried about it. That he did not want to lose his Iman. So, he said, if you spend the like of Uhud in gold, Ibn Ka'ab responded, if you spend the like of Uhud in gold, so if you had gold as much as the Uhud Pahar, the mountain, Allah will not accept it from you until you believe in Qadha wa Qadr. And know that what has befallen you would not have missed you, and what has missed you would not have befallen you. जो तुम पे गिर पड़ा है वो रुकने वाला नहीं था, और जो नहीं गिरने वाला था वो गिर नहीं सकता था. अल्लाह अकबर कबीरा. If you die on other than this, you will be among the people of hellfire. समझ लो बात. Then he added that I went to Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu, Hudhayfa ibn al-Yaman radiallahu anhu, and Zayd ibn Thabit radiallahu anhu, and told them about this. And each of them told me that the same thing was also told to them on the authority of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. देखो मेरे भाई, तकदीर हक है, qada wa qadr is haq. We believe in it. And understanding of it is truly, wallahi lazim, not difficult. We have been asked not to talk about it in detail because shaitan is there to keep putting doubts in our mind. Lekin, understanding it is not very difficult if Allah opens our hearts to us for it. My belief is that everything that Allah has asked us to believe, there's a reason for it. There's wisdom behind it. And if there is, then we can understand it. At least some of it, if not totally. So then, let me explain it to you. As I said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered the pen to write everything that was going to be created and what's going to happen to them and how it's going to end. Everything about creation, every single being of creation, whether it was human, not human, animals, birds, fishes, trees, whatever, everything, totally. Written. That cannot be changed. Now, the confusion comes in. When you go into all the other tafasir of these things, and some hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which says, dua can change the taqdeer. Am I right? There are hadiths about it. Now, this creates confusion. Now it creates confusion. Understanding that is not difficult either. Remember, number one, we do not know what was written. Please, that's number one understanding, which is very important. Number one, we do not know what was written. If we do not know and we cannot know what was written, and if you make the dua about something, Allah protect us from some hardship and whatnot, and Allah protected us from it, then that was what was written. So, then that was it. That was what was written. Allah knew this hardship would befall him, and Allah knew that then He is going to ask me, turn back to me, ask for forgiveness, and plead to me for help, and then I would make it easy for him and take it away from him. That was written. Now the whole thing has become very clarified. There's no confusion anymore. Done. Now then, hardships, like I said, which you just heard in the hadith, what was decreed to befall upon you could not be stopped. But if you make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for ease, He will make it easy to go through. That He can do. Right? That is also part of taqdeer. He knew it beforehand. He knew that beforehand as well. And makes it easy for us to pass through the hardship. And then remembering for us, Allah does not put on anybody a taklif, a hardship that he cannot bear. Belief in qada wa qadr is a necessary part of Iman, and why it is there because it makes it easy for us to go through the hardships of life. That's why it is there. And it strengthens our faith and iman in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it makes us then to follow the advice of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. If you are in need, if you need of protection, if you want to ask something, turn to Allah. Because He's in control. That it makes doing that easy for us, the belief in Qada wa Qadr. अबू उमामा रदियल्लाहु अन्हु फरमाते हैं कि रसूलुल्लाह सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम ने फरमाया, बेशक रूह कुदस ने मेरे जहन में ये बात डाली है कि कोई जान उस वक्त तक नहीं मरेगी जब तक कि वो अपनी मुद्दत पूरी न कर ले और अपना रिस्क जो अल्लाह ताला ने लिख दिया है वो न खा ले। बस रिस्क की तलाश में हुस्न सलूक करो। और तुम में से किसी को रिस्क में ताखीर इस बात की इजाजत न दे कि वो नाफरमानी के जरिए रिस्क तलाश करे। बेशक अल्लाह जो कुछ उसके पास है वो नहीं देता मगर अताअत के साथ। बड़ी समझने की बात है। What is this hadith teaching us? The Messenger of Allah, peace be upon him, it is narrated by Abu Umama radhiyallahu anhu. Verily, the Holy Spirit inspired in my mind that the soul will never die until it finishes its term and consumes its provisions. Thus, be graceful in seeking provision, and let not one of you allow the delay of provision to compel him to seek it by disobedience. Verily, Allah does not grant what is with him but by obedience. तीन चीजें साफ हो गई. Three things became clear from this part of this hadith. Number one, the risk is predetermined. Our risk is predetermined. And the risk does not mean just the wealth. The risk means our share from this earth of everything. That's what risk means. And that's predetermined. We cannot die until we finish our risk here. The last grain of it. We cannot die. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will provide that risk to us only through His obedience and submitting to Him. Dekho, there's another hadith from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has predetermined your share from this dunya. It's up to you now if you acquire it from haram means or halal means. Dekho, sometimes people lose their jobs and they lose their businesses and they don't see any way out of it. And they say, well, I've tried everything, nothing works. Now I have to do things by means that are not right, but I have no choice. I have no choice. If I have to do business, if I have to save my business, I have to take the loan on interest. वो लोन तो आपको मिल जाएगी. You will get the loan, but there will be no barakah in it. Which is what Allah said in the Quran. Allah ने सूद में बरकत नहीं रखी. And if you acquire by haram means lots of wealth, wallahi al-azim, you will not be able to use it. It will be wasted. Either you will waste it, you will lose it, or people who will inherit you after will lose it. But it will not be of use to anyone. Which is what this hadith is teaching us. In acquiring your risk, go about it in an honest halal way, in a decent way, in a just way. And if it is delayed, don't become impatient and go to do haram things. Wait patiently, because Allah has promised to bring you your risk, every last grain of it, before you die. That's His promise. So why rush? Why not wait? But remember, you would only get your share, no more than that. You can't say, Allah gave me, but look, He just gave me dal chawal. And look, those guys are eating biryanis. We can't say that. Risk is risk. As much as dal and chawal is risk, biryani is risk. It's risk. Pet bharne ki cheez. So as long as we get the risk, we don't have any right to complain. कि उसको ज़्यादा क्यों दिया, मुझे कम क्यों दिया, उसको ये क्यों दिया, मुझे ये क्यों नहीं दिया. So bhai, this is what we learn from these ahadith, these advices of Rasulullah. Now you tell me, what is your takeaway from this? What are you taking away from this? Tawakkaltu ala Allah. Mashak. We need to be mindful of Allah's commands in our daily life. And we need to remember, if we fulfill His commands, He will fulfill our needs and save us from every harm and harmful things. If we ask, we should always ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If we seek help, it should be from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala first. And He will put in people's heart to fulfill your needs. No one can give us anything or take away from us anything except what Allah has predestined for us. And Qaza Qadr has been written way before everything was created. And it's with His divine knowledge and the knowledge of Ghaib. It is an essential requirement of Iman, very important and very beneficial to believe in. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put it in our hearts and we live by this. Questions?
So how to find the difference in this very fine line between how much effort you can put through
Sure.
and where to stop? I mean, now this is Qadarullah.
Sure. How much effort should we put in and where to stop based on the belief in Qadrullah? Going back to point number 1 I mentioned, we don't know what Qadrullah is. We do not know and we cannot know what was written. And therefore we cannot stop trying. Period. We cannot blame our laziness on Qadrullah.
That's a very, very difficult 7 billion people face that.
We cannot blame our laziness, lack of effort, sincerity on Qadrullah. That's not right. That's not even jais. Why? Again, go for the Quran. Allah says in the Quran, for a person it is what he strives for. सारे जवाब तो कुरान में है ना? There's nothing for a person except for what he strives for. Clear? Any other questions? اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه. سبحان ربنا علينا الوهاب ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار وقنا عذاب القبر وقنا عذاب الحشر وقنا عذاب الميزان. ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. اللهم حبب إلينا الإيمان وزينه في قلوبنا وكره إلينا الكفر والعصيان وكره إلينا الكفر والعصيان واجعلنا من الراشدين وتوفنا مسلمين. اللهم إنا نسألك من خير ما سألك منه نبيك وحبيبك محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم ونعوذ بك من شر ما استعاذك منه نبيك وحبيبك محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وأنت المستعان ولك البلاغ ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العظيم وصلى الله تعالى على خلقه محمد وآله أجمعين برحمتك يا أرحم